The Committee on Science, Space, and Technology will come to order. Without objection, the Chair is authorized to declare recesses of the committee at any time. Pursuant to Committee Rule 2E and House Rule 11-2H4, the Chair announces that he may postpone roll call votes. Today, we meet to consider H.R. 4376, the Department of Energy Research Infrastructure Act of 2017, H.R. 4377, the Accelerating American Leadership in Science Act of 2017, H.R. 4378, the Nuclear Energy Research Infrastructure Act of 2017, H.R. 4375, the STEM Research and Education Effectiveness and Transparency Act, H.R. 4323, the Supporting Veterans in STEM Careers Act, H.R. 4254, the Women in Aerospace Education Act, and H.R. 3397, the Building Blocks of STEM Act. All these 7 bills are bipartisan bills, and we are only expecting one amendment on each of 2 bills, I believe. I'll recognize myself for an opening statement. Today, we will consider the 7 bills, starting with 3 energy bills. Together, these first 3 bills direct and authorize upgrades to Department of Energy facilities across the country. DOE National Labs host over 30,000 researchers each year. These bills provide infrastructure investments that are crucial to ensuring America remains a leader in basic research and innovation. The first bill is H.R. 4376, the Department of Energy Research Infrastructure Act. This legislation, sponsored by Energy Subcommittee Vice Chairman Steve Knight and Representative Dan Lipinski, authorizes funds from the DOE Office of Science budget to complete construction of 3 science infrastructure projects. The bill provides upgrades to the ultraviolet and soft X-ray light source at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab and the X-ray laser at SLAC National Accelerator Lab at Stanford University, ensuring that these facilities remain the best in the world. These advanced light sources facilitate research in chemistry, physics, biology, medicine, and manufacturing. The Knight bill also authorizes and directs the construction of the facility for rare isotope beams at Michigan State University through the DOE Nuclear Physics Program. This first-of-a-kind facility will allow researchers to study a variety of rare isotopes, advancing science discoveries in fields ranging from medicine to astrophysics. The next energy bill is H.R. 4377, the Accelerating American Leadership in Science Act. This legislation authorizes upgrades to the Advanced Photon Source at Argonne National Lab and the Spallation Neutron Source at Oak Ridge National Lab. It also funds the construction of the Long Baseline Neutrino Facility, which, once completed, will be the premier international facility in high-energy physics. I want to thank the bill sponsors, Representative Randy Hultgren and Representative Bill Foster, for their longstanding support of basic research and investments in these best-in-the-world science facilities. H.R. 4378, the Nuclear Energy Research Infrastructure Act, is our 3rd energy bill today. H.R. 4378, sponsored by Energy Subcommittee Chairman Randy Weber and full committee ranking member Eddie Bernice Johnson, authorizes funds to construct the Versatile Neutron Source, a DOE fast neutron user facility that will facilitate the development of the next generation of nuclear reactors by the private sector. Advanced nuclear reactor technology provides the best opportunity to make reliable, emission-free electricity available throughout the industrial and developing world. This user facility will ensure U.S. companies develop this critical advanced reactor technology in the United States. Next, we will consider 4 bipartisan STEM bills. The first is H.R. 4375, the STEM Research and Education Efficiency and Transparency Act, which requires a report to Congress on the effectiveness of NSF STEM education programs to help determine what investments work and which are not effective. The bill also improves the collection and reporting of data on individual federal research grant applications to ensure transparency. I want to thank Research and Technology Subcommittee Chairwoman Mrs. Comstock and Ranking Member Johnson for their work on STEM issues, and in particular promoting opportunities for women in STEM. The next STEM bill is H.R. 4323, the Supporting Veterans in STEM Careers Act, which promotes veteran involvement in STEM education and research programs at NSF, including computer science and cybersecurity. The bill also establishes a subcommittee at the National Science and Technology Council on Veterans and Military Families. I thank the lead sponsors of this bill, Congressman Dunn, an 11-year Army veteran and MD, and Mr. Takano, both members of this committee and the Veterans Affairs Committee as well. I'd also like to acknowledge the 6 Science Committee members who are original co-sponsors of the bill and military veterans: Roger Marshall, Barry Loudermilk, Ralph Abraham, Brian Babin, Steve Knight, and Jim Banks. The third STEM bill is H.R. 4254, the Women in Aerospace Education Act, which strengthens aerospace workforce opportunities for women. It provides for internships at national labs and NASA centers through the NSF Noyce Teacher Scholarship Program and NASA Fellowship opportunities. I thank the sponsors, Mr. Knight and Ms. Esty, for their work on promoting STEM opportunities for women. And Ms. Esty, I know you've been promoting that for years, in fact, so nice to come to fruition. The fourth STEM bill we will consider is H.R. 3397, the Building Blocks of STEM Act, which directs NSF to support STEM education research focused on early childhood. Ms. Rosen and Mr. Knight are the sponsors of this bill, and we appreciate their work as well. I'll now recognize the ranking member, Eddie Bernice Johnson of Texas, for her opening statement.
Thank you very much, Chairman Smith, for holding today's markup of 7 bills, most or all of which should receive bipartisan support. Included in today's markup are 4 STEM education-related bills: the STEM Research and Education Effectiveness and Transparency Act, the Supporting Veterans in STEM Careers Act, the Women in Aerospace Education Act, and the Building Blocks of STEM Act. I want to voice my support for all of these bills, each of which has bipartisan support. I myself am co-sponsor of the STEM Research and Education Effectiveness and Transparency Act, which includes a section from my own STEM Opportunities Act. I strongly believe that encouraging STEM education, especially in historically underserved groups, is vital to ensuring a strong future for all Americans. Each of these bills contribute to improving access to STEM education in America, and I encourage my colleagues to support them all. We're also marking up 3 bills which promote research at the Department of Energy: the Department of Energy Research Infrastructure Act of 2017, the Accelerating American Leadership in Science Act of 2017, and the Nuclear Energy Research Infrastructure Act of 2017. I support each of these bills. These bills will help to ensure that the Department of Energy has the cutting-edge facilities to conduct the groundbreaking research we've come to expect of the department. I'm an original co-sponsor of H.R. 4378, which establishes a new facility that would be critical for the development of advanced nuclear reactors. If we want American science and industry to remain at the forefront, these types of DOE research and user facilities are essential. I urge my colleagues to support each of these bills, and I thank you, Mr. Smith. I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Pursuant to notice, I now call up H.R. 4376, the Department of Energy Research Infrastructure Act of 2017, and the clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 4376, a bill to direct the Secretary of Energy to carry out certain upgrades to research equipment and the construction of a research user facility and for other purposes.
Without objection, the bill is considered as read and open for amendment at any point. Now I'll recognize the sponsor of the bill, the gentleman from California, Mr. Knight, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this opportunity to speak on behalf of this important legislation. H.R. 4376, Department of Energy Research Infrastructure Act of 2017, authorizes upgrades and construction of major user facilities at Department of Energy, national labs, and universities. My bill will support the research infrastructure needed to conduct leading basic energy science and nuclear physics research initiatives here in the United States. The Advanced Light Source, ALS, at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab is a specialized particle accelerator that generates bright beams of X-ray light for scientific research. The proposed upgrade to this facility will ensure that the DOE can maintain ALS's status as a world-class X-ray facility and allow scientists to study the structure and behavior of materials at extremely small scales. The Lineik Coherent Light Source, LCLS, is the world's first hard X-ray free electron laser. The proposed upgrade to this facility located at SLAC, National Accelerator Laboratory at Stanford University, will provide a major jump in imaging capability and will enable researchers to perform groundbreaking experiments in chemistry, materials, biology, and energy. The Facility for Rare Isotope Beams, FRIB, at Michigan State University is a one-of-a-kind linear accelerator user facility that will allow researchers to study rare isotopes and their properties. This facility will support research that expands our understanding of atomic structures and could facilitate discoveries in medicine and physics. The research infrastructure authorized by this legislation will open the door for American entrepreneurs to develop the next generation of technology and train the next generation of researchers in chemistry, physics, and materials science. H.R. 4376 reaffirms the federal government's key role in basic research. My home state of California has long been a world leader in advanced science and technology and is home to millions of entrepreneurs eager to take advantage of the best research facilities in the world. It's our job in Congress to make sure these facilities stay at the cutting edge of science and keep the next generation of scientists and innovators here in the United States. These key user facilities upgrades will enable transformative discoveries in basic science and will give the private sector the tools they need to develop breakthrough technologies in medicine, manufacturing, and energy. In Congress, it is our responsibility to take a long-term view and be patient. Making smart investments can lead to the next big discovery. My bill funds the research infrastructure necessary to make those discoveries possible. I want to thank the chairman. I want to thank Representatives Lipinski, Chairman Weber, Randy Hultgren for joining me as original co-sponsors of this important legislation. I encourage my colleagues to support this bill, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Knight. And the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Lipinski, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for bringing forth these bipartisan bills today. I want to thank my colleague from California, Mr. Knight, for introducing this bill. I'm very happy to join him on the bill. I also want to mention my support for the next two bills that we are going to be considering, the Accelerating American Leadership in Science Act and Nuclear Energy Research Infrastructure Act. All these bills authorize funding for critical research facilities that are within the Department of Energy. The projects funded by these bills will support world-class research facilities that are important for advancing fields of energy, medicine, material science, geology, chemistry, and many others. Not only do these research facilities advance our scientific understanding, they also serve as tools to improve our national security and support new product development. One of the projects being authorized today is the Advanced Photon Source Upgrade at Argonne National Lab, which is in my district and also in Mr. Foster's district. In addition to universities around the country, its user community for the Advanced Photon Source include major corporations such as Dow Chemical, Ford Motor Company, and GE. So it has a great user base that's very, very important for industry. All of these large-scale DOE research tools are national assets of a scale that only the federal government can provide. And it's our investment in them that makes the U.S. the world leader in research and innovation. So I want to urge my colleagues to support all of these bills, and I will yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Lipinski. And the gentleman from Texas, Ms. Johnson, is recognized for her statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This legislation includes authorizations of important upgrades for the Department of Energy user facilities that are really vital to the U.S. scientific enterprise. Our laboratories are the crown jewels of American innovation, and the user-driven science facilities at those laboratories and at our universities are the foundation on which our leadership in science is built. I'm very pleased to see this bipartisan effort to expand our research capabilities of DOE, and I'm sure this is an area in which we can continue to work together. I strongly support the passage of H.R. 4376, the Department of Energy Research Infrastructure Act of 2017, and I hope my colleagues will join me in ensuring that this swift consideration goes to the floor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. If there's no further discussion or reporting quorum being present, I move that the Committee on Science, Space, and Technology report H.R. 4376 to the House with the recommendation that the bill be approved. The question is on favorably reporting H.R. 4376 to the House. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the bill is ordered reported favorably. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. H.R. 4376 is ordered reported to the House. I ask unanimous consent that the staff be authorized to make any necessary technical conforming changes, and without objection, so ordered. We will now go to H.R. 4377, and pursuant to notice, I call up H.R. 4377, the Accelerating American Leadership in Science Act of 2017, and the clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 4377, a bill to direct the Secretary of Energy to carry out an upgrade to research equipment and construct research user facilities and for other purposes.
And without objection, the bill is considered as read and open for amendment at any point. I'll recognize the sponsor of the bill, Mr. Holmgren, for his statement.
Thank you so much, Chairman Smith. Thank you, and I want to let you know how much I appreciate your work on this, Chairman, and the committee's work to get this legislation moving forward. I'd also like to thank my colleagues from Illinois, Mr. Foster and Mr. Lipinski, for their support on this legislation. And I commend the Chairman of the Energy Subcommittee, Mr. Weber, and the gentleman from California, Mr. Knight, for their work on this bill and other legislation to maintain American leadership in research infrastructure. I'd like to express my strong support for H.R. 4377, the Accelerating American Leadership in Science Act. This legislation authorizes priority research needs at our national laboratories and comes after extensive work with the scientific community and the Department of Energy advisory committees, laying out a responsible path forward for America to maintain and build on our leadership role in scientific research. Last night, the American winners of this year's Nobel Prize visited Washington, D.C. and had a reception at the Ambassador of Sweden's residence. The prize ceremony in Sweden will be early next month. We have the bulk of this year's winners, which is not unusual. The United States has nearly 3 times the number of Nobel laureates than any other country, and this is not by chance. Before World War II, most countries were neck and neck. After the war, America realized that leadership in science was vital for our national security as well as for our competitiveness. It was our national labs, born out of the Manhattan Project, that gave our research community access to the tools which no one university or company could ever maintain. This legislation continues our commitment to American leadership. This bill authorizes construction of the Long Base Neutrino Facility, which this committee heard about when it was first proposed by the High Energy Physics Advisory Panel's P5 report. I was at the groundbreaking of the FAR site in South Dakota earlier this year, and the international community has already pledged support of over $100 million to be a part of this. This is an exciting time in science where more projects are becoming international. Upgrades to the advanced photon source maintain our leadership status in X-ray science, which have applications that have led to 2 Nobel Prizes in chemistry, as well as treatments for HIV and improvements in advanced manufacturing. These upgrades are again responding to the research community, and APS is already serving more than 6,000 researchers every year. Upgrades to the Oak Ridge spallation neutron source were again called out by the Basic Energy Science Advisory Committee, calling these upgrades, and I quote, absolutely central to contribute to world-leading science, end quote. These upgrades would give the United States the most intense pulsed neutron beams in the world, serving researchers looking at material properties at the atomic level. Again, I'd like to thank my colleagues for their work on this legislation, and I urge passage by this committee as we try to bring this to the floor. And with that, Chairman, I yield back.
And thank you, Mr. Holmgren. And another gentleman from Illinois is recognized for his opening statement, Mr. Foster.
Thank you, Chairman Smith and Ranking Member Johnson, for holding this markup. I am proud to be offering this bipartisan bill with my colleague, Mr. Holmgren from Illinois, to authorize funding for 3 important projects: Argonne's Advanced Photon Source, Fermilab's Long Baseline Neutrino Facility, and Oak Ridge's Spallation Neutron Source Proton Power Upgrade. I also want to thank Mr. Knight, Mr. Lipinski, Mr. Weber, and Chairman Smith for their support as co-sponsors of this bill as well. The United States has been at the forefront of innovation and progress, largely due to our investment in scientific research. The Department of Energy laboratories have made scientific discoveries that will be in the science textbooks forever and have helped raise the standard of living for millions of Americans. This scientific progress requires us to take a long view. Most discoveries are not made overnight, and experiments need sustained attention and resources for us to learn from them. Similarly, our scientific infrastructure requires long-term sustained funding to ensure opportunities are not missed. Experiments conducted at Argonne National Laboratory's Advanced Photon Source, or APS, support both discovery science and market-driven research. Pharmaceutical research at the APS has yielded life-saving new drugs for HIV, melanoma, and renal cell carcinoma. Industrial chemists have used the APS to develop energy-saving solar shingles, while combustion researchers have developed a process that's led to cleaner diesel engines. And research conducted at the APS led to a Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 2012 for work on G-coupled protein receptors, which are helping us develop more effective medications to aid in our fight against opioid addiction. The APS needs to be upgraded to ensure American scientists and companies continue to have access to the best scientific equipment in the world. The APS upgrade will use next-generation technology to make the APS hundreds of times brighter, opening up scientific frontiers at the nanoscale that are completely inaccessible today. The upgrade leverages the existing infrastructure valued at about $1.5 billion, while applying new technologies to create a world-leading facility at substantially less cost than a new facility. This technology includes some really incredible magnets. As someone who spent a lot of his life optimizing magnet pole tip designs, these are right at the edge of what is possible, and I have great respect for our ability to pull this off. With this upgrade, the APS will become the ultimate 3D microscope, and without it, the United States would lose its leadership in X-ray science to Europe, Japan, and China. The second critical project this bill authorizes is the LBNF Dune project, which is critical to maintaining U.S. leadership in high-energy physics and fundamental science. This facility, located at Fermi National Accelerator Laboratory in Batavia, Illinois, where I worked for 25 years and raised my family, and also at the Sanford Underground Research Facility in Lead, South Dakota, will be the first major international world-class facility to be hosted by the United States. Neutrinos are among the most abundant and fascinating particles in the universe, and understanding their nature may provide the key to understanding some of the most fundamental questions about the nature of our universe. LBNF Dune would be the most powerful tool in the world to study these particles and would help solidify the Department of Energy's high-energy physics program as a world leader. More than 770 scientists from 150 institutions in 26 countries stand ready to contribute scientifically and with materials to the LBNF Dune project, and I urge this subcommittee to provide full and robust funding for the Department of Energy's high-energy physics account. And finally, the third project authorizes the Oak Ridge Spallation Neutron Source Proton Power Upgrade. Oak Ridge's National Laboratory's Spallation Neutron Source is the most powerful pulse neutron experimental facility in the world. It provides researchers with a variety of disciplines with the capabilities to make precise measurements and answer the crucial fundamental questions that drive their research. But there are international competitors, particularly in Europe, that are challenging that leadership. The proposal upgrades included in this bill, the second target station and proton power upgrade, will enable this facility to significantly increase the number of academic and industrial researchers that it can serve and to maintain its world-leading capabilities. I'd also like to take note of the Department of Energy's very thoughtful leadership of this project from the start. One of the toughest things in a new project is trying to figure out how much scope to leave for potential upgrades. And it was done very well and very intelligently in the initial spallation neutron source design, making this upgrade much cheaper than it would have been had it simply been taped down at the end of the project. Investments in these projects and our broader scientific infrastructure are the only way to ensure that America remains an international leader. Thank you, and I urge my colleagues to support this bill and yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. And the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Johnson, is recognized for her opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Similar to the previous bill, this legislation would authorize upgrades to the Department of Energy's user facilities that were recommended by the Basic Energy Science Advisory Committee. These upgrades are critical to U.S. leadership in fundamental science and are important tools for industry and university researchers. These investments could significantly expand the number of users that can access these facilities. On that note, I'm encouraged to see the inclusion of explicit authorization levels in the bill that we are considering today. I'd like to thank Congressman Foster for his work on the committee and highlighting the value of these user facilities. And of course, he has personal experience. He is likely the only member of Congress can draw on his personal experience in supporting this work. And I hope we can continue this bipartisan collaboration to authorize other vital research activities at the federal science agencies that we oversee. I strongly encourage my colleagues to support and join me in voting for the bill. And I thank you, Mr. Chairman, and yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. If there's no further discussion, a reporting quorum being present, I move that the Committee on Science, Space, and Technology report H.R. 4377 to the House with the recommendation that the bill be approved. The question is on favorably reporting H.R. 4377. All in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the bill is ordered reported favorably. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. H.R. 4377 is ordered reported to the House, and I ask unanimous consent that staff be authorized to make any necessary technical and conforming changes. Without objection, so ordered. Pursuant to notice, I now call up H.R. 4378, the Nuclear Energy Research Infrastructure Act of 2017, and the clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 4378, a bill to direct the Secretary of Energy to carry out the construction of a versatile reactor-based fast neutron source and for other purposes.
Without objection, the bill is considered as read and open for amendment at any point. And the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Weber, the chairman of the Energy Subcommittee, is recognized for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak on this critical legislation. I want to thank you and Ranking Member Johnson for co-sponsoring H.R. 4378, the Nuclear Energy Research Infrastructure Act of 2017, and quite frankly, for y'all's leadership in advocating for nuclear energy research and development. I am grateful for the opportunity to work alongside my fellow Texans and the other members of this committee to support research projects that will keep America safe, globally competitive, and encourage nuclear innovation. Last Congress, this committee held hearings, met with stakeholders, and worked extensively with our colleagues in the Senate to draft the Nuclear Energy Innovation Capabilities Act. This comprehensive bipartisan authorization bill directed the DOE, Department of Energy, to invest in supercomputing capabilities, created a framework for DOE to partner with the private sector to host prototype development for advanced reactors, and laid out a clear timeline and parameters for DOE to complete a research reactor. This bill passed the House 3 times last Congress and passed the House again in January as a part of the DOE Research Innovation Act. The research reactor, or versatile neutron source, authorized in that bill is crucial for the development of advanced reactor designs, materials, and nuclear fuels. This type of research requires access to fast neutrons, which are currently only available for civilian research in Russia. While modeling and simulation can accelerate R&D, nuclear energy research must be validated through a physical source like a research reactor. Today, we will consider my bill to authorize specific funding to build that research reactor. H.R. 4378 allocates funds from within the DOE Office of Nuclear Energy for the construction of the versatile neutron source. This facility is a reactor-based fast neutron source that will operate as an open access user facility in the DOE National Lab System and will facilitate academic and proprietary research in the U.S. Access to fast neutrons is a critical part of the development of next-generation materials and fuels for advanced nuclear reactor technology. The versatile neutron source will also enable the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to verify data on new fuels, materials, and designs more efficiently, expediting regulatory approval for advanced nuclear reactors. Without this user facility, this research simply will not take place. We cannot afford to lose the ability to develop innovative nuclear technology, and we cannot rely on international partners to develop safe and secure advanced reactors. And as more developing nations look to nuclear energy to grow their economies, America must maintain our nuclear capabilities and continue to develop cutting-edge technology here at home. let me add, from a national security perspective, we must have nuclear superiority. And so this bill will also help maintain that capability for America to influence security and proliferation standards around the world by maintaining cutting-edge nuclear science. By building this user facility, we will fortify the U.S. commitment to safely advancing nuclear technology. H.R. 4378 will authorize funding to construct this critical user facility and ensure that we keep the best nuclear scientists, engineers, and entrepreneurs working right here in the United States. I encourage my colleagues to support this bill, and Mr. Chairman, I reserve the balance of my time.
Thank you, Mr. Weber. And the gentlewoman from Texas, an original co-sponsor of the legislation, is recognized for her statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased to co-sponsor this bill with Congressman Weber. This legislation marks another accomplishment in our continued collaboration to advance nuclear energy innovation. Nuclear power plays a vital role in providing our country with clean, reliable energy. But there are currently technical, economic, and policy challenges that prevent nuclear energy from playing a larger role in enabling our clean energy future. This bill, the Nuclear Energy Research Infrastructure Act, would help address these challenges. It expands on a provision included in another bill that I co-sponsored with Mr. Weber and the chairman, H.R. 431, the Nuclear Energy Innovation Capabilities Act, which passed the House in January on a voice vote as part of yet another bill that I co-sponsored with these two gentlemen, H.R. 589, the Department of Energy Research and Innovation Act. The bill we are considering today would provide the Department of Energy the direction and funding it needs to create a national user facility with critical capabilities to advance nuclear technologies in America. I'm hoping that if we provide our scientists and industry leaders with the right tools, they can fulfill the promise of clean nuclear energy that is safer, less expensive, more efficient, and produces less waste than the current fleet of reactors. I'm also strongly supportive of the inclusion of the explicit funding levels as part of this authorization, providing the department and congressional appropriators with a funding profile for research activities and projects is a crucial responsibility in our role as an authorizing committee. In particular, this helps to ensure that construction of cutting-edge research facilities like this one has the resources they need to be completed on time and on budget, thus making sure that the U.S. taxpayers are footing these bills are getting the most value for their hard-earned dollars. I hope we can continue to include funding authorizations in future bills passed out of this committee, and I look forward to working with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle as we work to strengthen America's research enterprise across all of our agencies. I encourage my colleagues to support this bill, and I yield back the balance of time.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. If there is no further amendments, reporting.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes. The gentleman from California, Mr. Rohrbach, is recognized.
I just would like to make sure we go on record when and I support this legislation, but I'd like to go on record that we do need to look into new approaches when it comes to nuclear energy. For far too long, we have been relying on basically concepts and technology that were developed 60 and 70 years ago. Light water reactors, while they, I believe they've been successful in providing us a great deal of electricity, they are inherently dangerous. And for example, in the San Onofre nuclear power plant in Orange County is now closed, and it's costing the taxpayers $70 million a year simply to oversee that facility that's now closed, because the nuclear waste from those years is sitting right there. Now, I would hope that the money that we are spending in this bill will not go to try to tweak light water reactors and build the same type of systems. Instead, we are capable now of building small modular nuclear reactors that are safe, that cannot melt down, will not leave plutonium behind that can make bombs, and in fact will have a minimum of any type of waste as compared to light water reactors. So as we move forward with this particular research project that we're talking about right now, I would hope that we're on the record as saying, let's break some new ground. Let's open up the new horizons instead of just trying to perfect the old systems and improve them a little bit. And we also have to understand that, and I think nuclear energy offers a tremendous source of clean energy as it has, but there was a price to that in the past, that if we do it right now, we change this and go to a technology that we are capable of building, we can really endow future generations of Americans with clean energy that doesn't have the downside, which is the dangers of radiation material. By the way, the new reactors will be able to use the waste from the light water reactors that is left over for their own fuel to produce energy for future generations. It's win-win, but I have seen a great hesitancy on the part of the industry to commit themselves to this new approach to nuclear energy. And I would just say this, that we also have to pay attention in this committee, not only to the technology development, but understanding that the technology development is step one, and I would sure hope that after we do develop new sources of nuclear energy, that we go into the licensing procedures. There are so many restrictions now on new technology, especially in the nuclear field, that it takes decades to even think about it. And we were capable of building the type of light water reactors that I'm talking about, Mr. Chairman. We were capable of this 10, 15 years ago, and we've gone nowhere on it because the licensing requirements are so restrictive that it's holding back progress. So with that said, I support this legislation. I think it's terrific that we have this type of bipartisan approach to something that could well and will, if we succeed, and we will succeed at it, ensure that future generations of Americans do have the type of wealth and the wealth and the other type and that clean environment and energy that is necessary for people to have decent lives. Ordinary people in this country deserve a decent life, and we are laying the foundation for that today. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Rohrabacher, for those comments. If there are no further amendments, reporting quorum being present, I move that the Committee on Science, Space, and Technology report H.R. 4378 to the House with the recommendation that the bill be approved. The question is on favorably reporting H.R. 4378 to the House. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the bill is reported favorably. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. H.R. 4378 is ordered reported to the House. Ask unanimous consent that staff be authorized to make any necessary technical and conforming changes. Without objection, so ordered. Pursuant to notice, I now call up H.R. 4375. We just didn't do that, didn't we? The STEM Research and Education Effectiveness and Transparency Act, and the clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 4375, a bill to provide for a study on broadening participation in certain National Science Foundation research and education programs to collect data on federal research grants to science agencies and for other purposes.
Without objection, the bill is considered as read and open for amendment at any point. I'll now recognize the sponsor of the bill, Ms. Comstock, for her opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. H.R. 4375, the STEM Research and Education Effectiveness and Transparency Act, contains two provisions aimed at providing better information on how to make taxpayer-funded investments in STEM and research and development more effective, transparent, and fair. First, the bill requires the National Science Foundation for the first time to report and make recommendations to Congress regarding the effectiveness of its research and education programs aimed at broadening the participation of women and historically underrepresented individuals and minorities in STEM. This report will give Congress, NSF, and other stakeholders objective information about what kinds of interventions and assistance are efficient, scalable, and effective. In order to have a vibrant economy that provides opportunity and prosperity for all, we must be the leader in STEM fields. To do that, we need to develop the talent of all Americans. We cannot afford to leave anyone behind. This report will help us focus resources on the best and most effective methods. Secondly, the bill requires all federal science agencies to collect standardized information, including demographics, for each application received for research and development grants. Agencies are to submit the information annually to NSF, which is directed to publish an annual statistical summary. This information will provide better transparency to how taxpayer dollars are spent on research and scientists across the federal government. I want to thank Ranking Member Johnson for joining me in sponsoring this bill and for her longtime commitment to ensuring STEM opportunities and advancement for all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your support as well, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mrs. Comstock. And the ranking member, the gentlewoman from Texas and original co-sponsor of the legislation, is recognized for her opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank Congresswoman Comstock for introducing H.R. 4375, the STEM Research and Education Effectiveness Transparency Act. I'm pleased to co-sponsor this good legislation. H.R. 4375 is a small but important step forward for addressing long-standing gaps in achievement and participation in the sciences. Research has shown that the observed shortages of women and minorities in STEM fields are not due to the lack of interest. To better understand the barriers faced by women and underrepresented minority groups in STEM, researchers and policymakers need access to better data on what really works to improve the recruitment and retention of women and minorities in STEM studies and careers. Importantly, we must also collect data that would reveal any inequities that originate within the federal agencies themselves, even if unintentionally. The bill directs the National Science Foundation to compile and report on all available data on the effectiveness of its portfolio of broadening participation programs. National Science Foundation must also identify what additional data would be needed to understand what makes programs effective. I commend NSF on the strides it has taken in recent years to accelerate its efforts to address the underrepresentation of women and minorities in STEM, but we need to ensure that they are producing results. This bill also includes one provision from our STEM Opportunities Act that requires all federal science agencies to collect and report annually on data for all research grant applications and awards. These data are essential to uncovering any inequities in federal funding for STEM research, and to developing smart policies to address the implicit biases that are typically behind such inequities. I continue to ask my good friend, Chairman Smith, my hero here, to take up the entirety.
Get that down in writing fast.
Of my STEM Opportunities Act, which has been very well vetted by many experts, and I'm encouraged by this first small step. I will say that I started this when Congresswoman Connie Morella and I did our first study on this committee, and I'm still pleading for the same goal. Thank you, and I yield back. Do this before you leave. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. We will renew our efforts and take another look and give it a good faith effort. If there is no further discussion, a reporting quorum being present, I move that the Committee on Science, Space, and Technology report H.R. 4375 to the House with the recommendation that the bill be approved. Question is on favorably reporting H.R. 4375 to the House. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the bill is ordered reported favorably. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table, and H.R. 4375 is ordered reported to the House. I ask unanimous consent that the staff be authorized to make any necessary technical and conforming changes. Without objection, so ordered. Next up, H.R. 4323. And pursuant to notice, I call up H.R. 4323, the Supporting Veterans in STEM Careers Act. And the clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 4323, a bill to promote veteran involvement in STEM education, computer science, and scientific research, and for other purposes.
Without objection, the bill is considered as read and open for amendment at any point. I'll now recognize the sponsor of the bill, Mr. Dunn, for his opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. H.R. 4223, the
Wait a minute.
come back on there. The Supporting Veterans in STEM Careers Act is about helping expand veterans' job and education opportunities in the sciences. The bill requires the National Science Foundation to develop a veterans outreach plan and publish data on veterans' participation in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics fields in its annual indicators report. The bill also updates the NSF NOICE Teacher Scholarship Program, fellowship programs, and cyber grant programs to include outreach to veterans. Additionally, the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy is tasked with overseeing an interagency working group examining how to increase veteran participation in STEM career fields, including addressing any barriers to service members and their spouses. In the next 5 years, between 1 and 1.5 million members of the U.S. Armed Forces will leave the military, according to the DoD. Many of these veterans will be seeking new careers by a wide margin, veterans cite finding employment as their #1 need when returning home. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics, occupations in the STEM fields is projected to grow to more than 9 million by 2020, an increase of 1 million jobs. Research shows that many military veterans have skills and training that align with STEM careers, particularly in information technology. However, it also shows that veterans face many barriers as they re-enter the workforce, including a lack of formal STEM education, career guidance, and the difficult task of transferring military credits to civilian college credits. Our nation's veterans deserve every opportunity to transition to a healthy and successful civilian life, and this bill will help our service members continue to serve our nation in new ways by filling 21st century jobs and keeping America on the cutting edge of innovation. I thank Mr. Takano, the ranking vice chair of the Veterans Affairs Committee that we both have the privilege to serve on, for co-sponsoring this bipartisan legislation, and I salute my fellow veterans on the committee who joined me in introducing this bill. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your support as well. I urge my colleagues to support the bill, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn, and the gentleman from California, Mr. Takano, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am pleased to offer my support for the bill being marked up today, the Supporting Veterans STEM Careers Act. I'm proud to offer this legislation with my colleague, Mr. Dunn. And as the vice-ranking member of the Veterans Affairs Committee, I've seen firsthand both the difficulties veterans face trying to further their education and the impact their experiences can have on a variety of civilian fields. I think everyone here agrees that we must find ways to improve higher education for veterans and the benefit veterans can have on the scientific and economic future of this country. Our bill directs the National Science Foundation to develop a plan to get more veterans into its STEM education and research programs. In addition, it requires NSF to report available data on veterans participating in STEM fields, both through research and careers. NSF will also be required to seek veterans out for existing NSF programs, including the NOICE Teacher Scholarship Program, and for cybersecurity specific education and training programs. This bill also creates an interagency committee to help veterans and their spouses transition into STEM careers, including annual reporting on their progress. For its part, the NSF has been looking for ways to better integrate veterans into STEM fields, and I applaud their work. And I know all of us are looking forward to making more progress in this effort, and I think our bill is an important step forward. I think this is a great example of a win-win. When we empower veterans to succeed, everyone benefits. Thank you, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Takano. And the ranking member, the gentlewoman from Texas, is recognized for her statement.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I want to thank Mr. Dunn and Mr. Cano for introducing H.R. 4323, the Supporting Veterans in STEM Careers Act. Veterans are an experienced group of dedicated individuals that far too long have remained a largely untapped source of talent in our nation's STEM workforce. Projections from the Bureau of Labor Statistics predict that workforce needs in STEM fields like computer science are outpacing our capacity to educate and train students in the field. H.R. 4323 is a step toward forestalling these projected gaps by leveraging a pool of skilled veterans to strengthen our STEM workforce. I support this bill, and I urge my colleagues to support it as well. I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. And the gentleman from California, Mr. Rohrabacher, is recognized.
Thank you very much. Just a few thoughts when we're talking about this outreach to veterans, that during the Second World War, right now, we recognize the great contribution that Americans who went overseas and fought for us, not just the contributions they made in the fighting, but now it's recognized that that greatest generation came home and built the American economy. America was never the same after World War II because we had millions of men and women who now were educated, and which we reached out to make sure they were educated when they came back, and playing a very vital role in our economy. That greatest generation, so we're thankful to them not only for fighting the good fight overseas and protecting our country, but for what they did to build our country afterwards. Well, we have been at war now for 16 years. We are at war. We've had people out, and we still have to this day, men and women out with their lives on the line and disrupting their life and moving forward and putting themselves at risk for us. They are making an enormous contribution, like the World War II generation. Their contribution will be even greater when they come home. I believe that there's that the veterans now, the millions, and I believe it's probably about the same number of veterans, but we have 16 years where they're spread out as the number of veterans we had in World War II. I think they have a major contribution to make to our country, and I really believe that what we're doing in this type of thing, this type of outreach, reflects what we did with the World War II generation. I want to make sure those men and women coming back from overseas, and some of them disabled, that all of them have an opportunity to make their contribution now and live good and decent lives in an economy that will be as different 10 years from now as our economy was 10 years after the Second World War. So with that thought, I want to thank you for your leadership and the leadership of those in this committee who are taking part in this debate, but also thought out this idea of having the National Science Foundation outreach to those brave men and women who are coming home. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rohrabacher. If there's no further discussion or reporting quorum being present, I move that the Committee on, the gentlewoman from Connecticut, Ms. Estee, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a fellow member of both this committee and the Veterans Affairs Committee, I wanted to lend my support as well. We know that we need to do right by our veterans. Too many of our veterans are unemployed. They have a higher unemployment rate than civilians. That's wrong and it's shameful. We have a critical workforce need in the STEM field, and we have special skills that our veterans bring. Mr. Rohrabacher mentioned that. Team building skills, practical experience, and all of those we actually need and would benefit from. So I'm really delighted to join my fellow colleagues on both House Veterans Affairs and this committee, Mr. Takano and Mr. Dunn, in supporting this legislation and urge us to do right by our veterans and do right for our country. Thank you very much, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Estee. If there's no further discussion or reporting quorum being present, I move that the Committee on Science, Space, and Technology report H.R. 4323 to the House with the recommendation that the bill be approved. The question is on favorably reporting H.R. 4323. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the bill is ordered reported favorably. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon a table. H.R. 4323 is ordered reported to the House, and I ask unanimous consent that the staff be authorized to make any necessary technical informing changes. Without objection, so ordered. Pursuant to notice, I now call up H.R. 4254, the Women in Aerospace Education Act, and the clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 4254, a bill to amend the National Science Foundation Authorization Act of 2002 to strengthen the aerospace workforce pipeline by the promotion of Robert Noyce Teacher Scholarship Program and National Aeronautics and Space Administration internship and fellowship opportunities to women and for other purposes.
Without objection, the bill is considered as read and open for amendment at any point. And the gentleman from California, Mr. Knight, is recognized for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an important initiative to strengthen our aerospace workforce. H.R. 4253, the Women in Aerospace Education Act, directs the National Science Foundation through the Robert Noyce Scholarship Program and NASA to shape their fellowship and internship opportunities to encourage more women to get aerospace experience while they're training to be teachers. Female aerospace professionals must be placed in the classroom at greater numbers. A full fifth of U.S. aerospace engineers are of retirement age today. They are beginning to exit our workforce, which will create an enormous shortfall in our national security preparedness. Meanwhile, women represent only about 1/4 of all STEM workers and represent about 15% of all aerospace engineers. We need to improve our STEM education pipeline, from ensuring STEM classes are available to students at a young age to encourage young Americans to pursue STEM education all the way through to the completion of their degree. But the gender gap that is so prevalent in this industry will persist until we make STEM and aerospace more inclusive of women and encourage women at a young age to pursue these fields. Attitudes about career paths are formed at a young age. The role models and leaders from which women learn have an enormous impact on future decision-making. I introduced the Women in Aerospace Education Act to make better use of some of the federal government's best teacher training programs to increase the number of women teachers who have seen, worked on, and can relate the nation's leading aerospace programs to young female students. Robert Noyce scholars who get teacher certification assistance from the National Science Foundation are already in small numbers getting experience in NASA centers and the national labs. Once they become certified and go to teach in our K-12 system, they draw upon the work they did on major public initiatives in science and technology. Schools love having Noyce program teachers because their strong positive attitudes about STEM are cultivated in their students. It will strengthen our STEM pipeline to enhance the connection between the Noyce Scholarship Program and our schools. The second provision of this bill directs NASA to more actively promote its internship and fellowship opportunities to women or members of other historically underrepresented groups. Together, the two provisions of this bill will help make a necessary and fundamental shift in our education system and aerospace workforce pipeline that will prove critical to our national security in the long run. I encourage my colleagues to support this legislation. I'd like to thank Ms. Esty for her partnership on this bill, and I yield the remainder of my time.
Thank you, Mr. Knight. And the gentlewoman from Connecticut, Ms. Esty, is recognized for her statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm proud to be introducing this legislation with my colleague, Mr. Knight, and I want to thank him for his work on this. And, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for co-sponsoring this bill, and to my colleague, Ms. Comstock. We've worked together on these bills for a number of years, and it's always great to see more good bipartisan work out of this committee. One of our common goals on the Science Committee is to inspire more young people, and particularly more young women, to pursue careers in the sciences. And at this moment, we have a long way to go in the aerospace field. We're rapidly facing a critical shortage of skilled aerospace workers. According to a 2015 Aviation Week workforce study, 28% of the aerospace workforce is 56 years old or older, and nearly a fifth of our aerospace engineers are now eligible for retirement. And we simply cannot fill those positions unless we broaden and deepen our pool of skilled workers. Moreover, women represent only about a quarter of all STEM workers and represent only 15% of all aerospace engineers. And that's why Representative Knight and I introduced the Women in Aerospace Education Act to address both the critical workforce needs and to bridge the gender gap in the aerospace industry. One of the key objectives of the Women in Aerospace Education Act is to equip more women with well-rounded working and learning experiences in aerospace engineering. Specifically, the Women in Aerospace Education Act would encourage universities applying for NOIS grants to incorporate aerospace working and learning experiences at the national laboratories and NASA centers for their fellowship programs. Robert Noyce teaching scholarship grants are used by universities to cover the cost of STEM degree students who go on to teach in rural or lower income school districts. Taking it a step further, our bill allows the National Science Foundation director to prioritize proposals for Noyce grants to provide female fellows with research experience in aerospace engineering. These teachers will then enter the classroom with firsthand knowledge of the impact aerospace programs have on our lives and share their passion and their inspiration with their students. It's proven, as my colleague Mr. Knight mentioned, that girls who have women science teachers are more likely to get interested in science. Additionally, this bill directs NASA to prioritize the recruitment of women and minority candidates to apply for internships and fellowships at NASA. I recently had a chance to visit United Technologies Corporation's Aerospace Systems, UTAS, in Connecticut to learn more about the ways Connecticut companies like UTAS and Ensign Bickford are supporting NASA's deep space exploration missions. When I toured the facilities, I noticed that the engineers working on the critical Orion components there were virtually all men and virtually all in their late 40s and 50s. I met Erica Abrahamson, a young woman who's the deputy program director for UTAS's portion of the Orion Deep Space Project. And she shared UTAS's concerns about the aging workforce. She and others at UTAS are looking down the line, and they know if they don't diversify their workforce, they'll have a major shortage. And we will never be able to retain our competitive edge in science as a country or to meet critical STEM workforce needs unless we bring more women to the table. In Congress, we recognize that need, and we're taking steps to address it. I want to thank my colleague, Congressman Knight, again for his leadership on this bill, on this important issue. I urge my colleagues to support the Women in Aerospace Education Act, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Esty. And the gentlewoman from Texas, the ranking member, is recognized for her statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank Mr. Knight and Ms. Esty for introducing H.R. 4254, the Women in Aerospace Education Act. This year, we saw NASA astronaut Peggy Whitson break the record for cumulative time spent in space by a U.S. astronaut. Dr. Whitson is an inspiration for girls pursuing aerospace careers, but her success is not entirely shared by women throughout the aerospace sector. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reports that in 2016, women made up only 8% of the aerospace engineers. H.R. 4254 will help address the underrepresentation of women in aerospace. I strongly support the passage of this bill, and I urge my colleagues to join me as well as the rest of the committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and you're back.
And thank you, Ms. Johnson. And the gentleman from California, Mr. Knight, is recognized for the purpose of offering an amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
And the clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment to H.R. 4254 offered by Mr. Knight of California, amendment number 037, page 2, line 3.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and Mr. Knight is recognized to explain his amendment.
Mr. Chairman, my amendment makes modifications in response to feedback from the National Science Foundation and the committee. The amendment gives NOIS scholars who are undergraduates and NOIS fellows who are working to obtain their master's degrees the opportunity to pursue research internships at NASA centers and national laboratories. These NOIS scholars and fellows who go on to become teachers can then take that experience back into the classroom and inspire students to go into aerospace jobs. I appreciate the National Science Foundation and the committee working with us on this bill. I urge the adoption of this amendment and yield back.
And thank you, Mr. Knight. I recommend our colleagues here support the amendment as well. And is there anyone else who seeks to be recognized? If not, the question is on agreeing to the amendment. All in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. And if there are no further amendments or reporting quorum being present, I move that the Committee on Science, Space, and Technology report H.R. 4254 to the House as amended with the recommendation that the bill be approved. Question is on favorably reporting H.R. 4254 to the House as amended. All in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the bill is ordered reported favorably. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. H.R. 4254 is ordered reported to the House. Ask unanimous consent that staff be authorized to make any necessary technical and conforming changes, and without objection, so ordered. Pursuant to notice, I now call up H.R. 3397, the Building Blocks of STEM Act, and the clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 3397, a bill to direct the National Science Foundation to support STEM education research focused on early childhood.
Without objection, the bill is considered as read and open for amendment at any point, and I'll recognize the sponsor of the bill, Ms. Rosen, for her opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Smith and Ranking Member Johnson, for holding today's markup on several STEM education bills, including one of mine, the Building Blocks of STEM Act. I also want to thank my colleague from across the aisle, Steve Knight, for co-leading this important legislation with me. STEM and computer science are central to our country's innovation, economic growth, and employment. In my home state of Nevada, and across the country, we are continuing to see a huge demand for workers in the tech industry, including software developers, engineers, and computer programmers like me. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, STEM jobs are estimated to grow by 12% between now and 2024, faster than all other occupations. Despite these increasing opportunities in STEM careers, too few Americans possess the education and skills necessary to succeed. This disparity between computing and scientific talent and demand begins back in elementary school. Studies have found that children who engage in scientific activities from an early age develop positive attitudes towards science and are more likely to pursue STEM careers later on. In fact, interviews with current graduate students and scientists found that the majority of them reported that their interest in science began before middle school. The bill before us today, the Building Blocks of STEM Act, will ensure that we're investing in our children as early as possible. By directing National Science Foundation to equitably distribute funding across groups, including early childhood, in its Discovery Research Pre-K through 12 program. While this program seeks to enhance the learning and teaching of STEM, the majority of its current research focuses on students in middle school and older. My bill ensures that NSF focuses on engaging our nation's children in STEM education even younger. I'm also grateful that the manager's amendment, introduced by Subcommittee Chairwoman Barbara Comstock, will incorporate into this legislation another STEM bill of mine, the Code Like a Girl Act, which I introduced alongside Representative Elise Stefanik, and of which Ms. Comstock is a co-sponsor. We all know the gender gap in STEM workforce is widening, particularly in computer science, where women hold only about 26% of computing-related occupations, even though we make up more than half of the workforce. This gender disparity extends down through all levels of education. In the last few years, approximately 23% of AP computer science exam takers were girls, and about only 18% of computer science bachelor's degrees went to women. Gender stereotypes begin at a very early age. Studies have shown that around 6 years old, girls develop the belief that brilliance is a male characteristic, and this negative stereotype is shown to have an immediate effect. The Code Like a Girl Act addresses this issue by creating NSF grants to increase understanding of the factors that contribute to the participation of young girls, 10 and under, in STEM and computer science activities. And this bill also creates a grant program to develop and evaluate interventions in pre-K and elementary school classrooms that seek to increase participation of young girls in computer science. By increasing the number of women in computer science careers, we diversify the qualified pool that the U.S. relies on for innovation. This will help us maintain our global competitiveness and expand our economy. So we shouldn't deprive our country of talented minds that could be working on our nation's most challenging problems. Talented young minds that could be inventing the next breakthrough technology, founding future startups, and keeping our nation safe from cyber attacks. So for those reasons, I am proud that my Code Like a Girl Act is being included in the Building Blocks of STEM Act, and that we are one step closer to bridging our current gaps in STEM education and workforce training. I urge my colleagues to support this legislation, and I yield back my time.
Thank you, Ms. Rosen. And the gentleman from California, Mr. Knight, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I speak in support of H.R. 3397, a bipartisan bill that I am proud to sponsor with Ms. Jackie Rosen. Investing in our children and their future is always an opportunity for good. Expanding the reach of our STEM education programs to children of all ages will create a greater future in innovation. Research shows that children at a very young age are capable of absorbing STEM concepts. And any parent can tell you that shortly after kids learn to talk, the questions can be endless. Children have a natural curiosity that can be fostered into an interest in science, technology, engineering, math, and computer science. The bill directs NSF to more equitably allocate funding for research and studies that focus on early childhood. Investing in children early, ensuring we are laying the groundwork to develop young innovators in STEM. I want to thank Ms. Rosen for her work on this bill and thank the chairman for his support, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Mr. Knight. And the gentlewoman from Texas, the ranking member, is recognized for her statement.
Thank you very much, Chairman Smith. I want to thank Ms. Rosen and Ms. Comstock for introducing 3397, the Building Blocks of STEM Act. Ms. Rosen has been a champion for increasing the participation of girls in computer science since she joined the Science Committee, and I commend her for her efforts. A research article published in the journal Science earlier this year revealed that girls began to view intelligence as a male trait as early as 6 years old. This attitude has a profound impact on educational and career choices made by young women. H.R. 3397 directs the National Science Foundation to support research into factors that contribute to the early adoption of these stereotypes and scalable models for intervention to prevent or reverse the effects of these negative and erroneous stereotypes. This legislation is good for this nation. I strongly support this bill and urge my colleagues to support it as well. I thank you and yield back the balance.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. We have an amendment in the nature of a substitute to be offered by Mrs. Comstock, and she is recognized for that purpose.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment at the desk.
And the clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment to H.R. 3397 offered by Mrs. Comstock of Virginia, amendment number 001. Strike all after the enacting clause and insert the following.
And the gentleman from Virginia continues to be recognized.
Okay. This amendment adds two provisions to the Building Blocks of STEM Act. The first is a section on supporting girls in STEM education and computer science based on legislation that I co-sponsored with Mrs. Rosen earlier this year, as was mentioned. The provision directs the National Science Foundation to research the role of teachers and other mentors in girls' perception of and participation in science. I have seen firsthand the important role that mentors can play in helping inspire young women through my own Young Women's Leadership Program that I run in my district in the summer, and it's important to learn how that impacts girls long-term in STEM. So also pleased to be able to participate recently in a coding program in a disadvantaged school in my district, and you'll be happy to know that the kindergartners were doing coding. They had a great little program that they had, and the girls were in there, and that's exactly, I said, you're like coding like a girl, right from kindergarten. It was really exciting to see that. The provision also directs NSF to develop scalable models to increase young girls' participation. Although women fill close to half of all jobs in the U.S. economy, they hold less than 25% of all STEM jobs. So this obviously can start changing this from kindergarten or even before on. Finally, the amendment includes a provision to add informatics and computer science to the definition of STEM in the Noyce teacher program. Informatics, the science of processing data for storage and retrieval, is one of the fastest growing STEM career fields. The Bureau of Labor Statistics projects the number of health informatics specialists to grow 15% by 2024, which is faster than the projected job growth of all other U.S. professions. We need teachers trained to understand this growing field and to develop the next generation of workers. Thank you, Mrs. Rosen, for working with us to come to agreement on this language. Together, these provisions will provide many building blocks for STEM, and I urge my colleagues to support the amendment, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mrs. Comstock. And is there any further discussion on the amendment? If not, the question is on agreeing to the manager's amendment. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. If there are no further amendments, reporting quorum being present, I move that the Committee on Science, Space, and Technology report H.R. 3397 to the House is amended with the recommendation that the bill be approved. Question is on favorably reporting H.R. 3397 to the House as amended. All those in favor say aye. It's getting weaker and weaker as we go along. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill is reported favorably. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. H.R. 3397 is ordered reported to the House. I ask unanimous consent that staff be authorized to make any necessary technical and conforming changes. Without objection, so ordered. Before we adjourn, I just want to thank all the members who have been here today, and hesitate to single out any particular group, but I will say we had almost full attendance looking to my left today, and that was very much appreciated. We still have a number of people here as well. Looking to my right, we have the author of the bill and 2 Texans, which is always a good combination to have. Well, they're back in the cloakroom, Ms. Johnson says. If there's no further discussion, that completes our business. This concludes the markup today. Without objection, we stand adjourned. I'm going to go look again. I haven't thought.